I'm Dr. Janine Peak Emsick, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this journey of discovery and growth. Here on Your Authentic Executive, we believe that the heart of leadership lies in the stories that we live. After more than 3 decades of executive coaching and consulting, along with teaching leaders at both the MBA and doctoral levels, I've come to understand that the most powerful lessons come from mining the gold in our own life stories. Each month, we'll feature the story of an inspiring executive, delving into the pivotal moments and life lessons that have shaped how they lead today. And leading up to these rich narratives, I'm excited to introduce you to our Your Authentic Executive Sparks. These are 3 powerful lessons lifted from an executive's life that will light the way to our upcoming podcast. If you want to be the first to hear about new episodes of Your Authentic Executive and these illuminating sparks, be sure to follow me on LinkedIn or sign up for our mailing list at yourexecutivecoach.com. I can't wait to share these stories with you and explore the authentic leadership that lies within each of us. Today's episode is a special one. It's snow day at the Cappellano household. And while most executives might scramble to reschedule, our guest today made it work, proving exactly why she's here. Raised in a small Indiana town, Kimberly Cappellano learned early that hard work and resilience shape success. She built a thriving career in finance, earned multiple advanced degrees, and launched a firm with growth of 27% year over year. But her biggest life lessons came from life itself, a NICU journey with her son Emerson, redefining leadership through empathy and setting non-negotiables for work and family. Her motto, "My optimism and attitude will get me through anything." Kim, welcome to Your Authentic Executive. Let's dive in.
Thank you, Janine. Great to be here.
So I'm just going to start with, it's a snow day today. And so it's a classic CEO mom day.
Correct.
And so what has your day been like thus far?
Interesting. You received an email from me early this morning that said, want to make this work. Don't know yet what it looks like. We have in-home childcare is what we were hoping for. But last night we were waiting for the school systems to say yay or nay, which is always the interesting part. The snow was falling, the wind is whirling, and we finally got that call around 8. We've got 4 kids at home, 8-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old, and 2-year-old twins. So you wake up and it's the hustle and bustle. And good thing I've got a great partner in crime, Vince. And so he led the charge when call started at 7:30. He said, "We're going to make it work. Tell Janine we're in." He set up the equipment. Luckily, also Jacelyn, who is part of our family during the day, she made it over here around 9, and here we are, 11:30. But it has been chaotic, and the kids are extra hyper because there's no school today. So you can imagine what it's like, but it's also fun. But no day looks the same in our house.
You shared a moment ago kind of what you first envisioned as a possibility when you realized that you were going to be home today and we had this scheduled. And it began with some distinct skills that your oldest Stella has. Can you just share that story of what that image was for you?
All I could think about is Stella's going to pick the lock, because she will. She'll use like a bobby pin, or even we have the little door locks. She'll come in and she'll think she needs to be part of this recording. And unfortunately, the twins, they shadow her. And so they would come in too. And unfortunately, she would then pull them out. And then you'd have 2 tantrums happening. And then it would just be purely chaotic. And that's all you would hear, is a bunch of screaming and toddlers in the background. And that's all I could envision by me recording this with you at home versus the office. But ultimately, if life brought us that, it probably would it would be successful, right? Because that's a look and a glimpse into what real life is every day, which is we don't know what's going to happen, and it'll be entertaining. So,
it's almost, go ahead.
As I say, it's real. That's real life. So.
Yep, it's authentic, which is kind of the purpose of what we are talking about today. So I must say, I may be a little disappointed if we don't have the, the chaos. Yeah, I remember during the pandemic, and we were all figuring out how to have meetings at home or virtual meetings. And Patrick Lencioni, who I just love his thinking and his work, and he wrote Death by Meetings and Five Dysfunctions of a Team. He's just so practical and kind of cuts to the chase. And I remember hearing him at a webinar saying, I'm going to miss the day when I don't see the dogs. And he named one of the dogs, in our webinars. And it made me think about, I was teaching some graduate courses virtually, and there were dads showing up in the evening holding their babies while their wife was doing something else, in the middle of those. And it helped us see real life in the middle of the work that we were doing. And so anyway, darn it if Stella doesn't pick a lock today. We'll see. So
all about, my husband has a business too, so it's all about logistics and coordination, and him and I just trading off, especially on days like today. But it is the authentic life of what families balance, right? When you've got multiple kids and no family looks the same, but it makes it fun. So
it does. So let's kind of back up a little bit and begin your life story, because it's just an amazing and an inspiring story. And it seems like it kind of starts as a regular old kind of American small town story, if I'm not mistaken. You were born in Plymouth, Indiana, and tell me a little bit about your earliest years.
So great family. Lived with my mom and dad. I have an older brother, just about 13 months older. Him and I, got along pretty well, which meant we drove each other crazy for most of our childhood. Him and I chose different routes. I was into sports. He loved to work. We're very close with our parents, extremely close with our grandparents. My mom's parents lived in the same small town as us, so we had the opportunity to spend every Sunday or Saturday night watching, this is going to sound funny, but Wheel of Fortune, and then the Hoosier Lottery show with my grandparents. And my grandma would make a new dessert every Saturday night. And that was our childhood through junior high and high school, would be going over there on Saturday. And then many Sunday dinners at grandma's house, which I miss now to this day, because it was just all built around family. So yeah, I would say very traditional upbringing, built around family, work ethic. My brother and I doing the chores, mowing lawns, doing the things that really shaped who we are today. And I'm proud of that.
And both of your parents worked, is that right?
Yeah. So my dad many times had multiple jobs, but he was a state trooper for the Indiana State Police. And then my mom started out, she stayed at home for a few years and then eventually worked at a Taco Bell and worked her way up into management. And that's then, of course, where I had my first official job at 14, which was no matter if you're going to play sports, in her mind, you're also going to have a job. So on Sundays, you would find me there at Taco Bell. And then in the summers, I would work more frequently. So I thought it was a good learning ground. And honestly, working at Taco Bell is a very humbling experience, is what I would say. Restaurants are tough. So
you provided this wonderful picture that I think my favorite part of it is the handwritten note on the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Starting on the hike at Inland Marsh, Kim showing off on the trail with Grandma and Ray. And so your grandma actually had a significant influence on your mindset, and that affected kind of choices you made in your life. Can you talk about your relationship with your grandma and what you learned from her?
Yeah. I mean, she honestly she had a feisty personality, which I loved about her, which is why my mom's that way. So I guess it trickled down, right? My grandmother's very outspoken. Same thing with my mom. She has that personality. My grandmother had a great sense of humor. That's where I think also mine comes from. She used sarcasm. I would say I do the same thing. Again, all traits that my mom has. One trait my mom doesn't have from my grandmother that I feel like I do is a great cook. My grandmother is one of the best cooks that I have. She grew up in the South. But I mean, she raised 5 children. She did a wonderful job. And so I think she just created a childhood and always just encouraged you to work hard. But that also instilled into my parents that my parents were always just work hard, outwork somebody else. You create your own destiny. And I think that just started with my grandparents down to my parents. And I couldn't have asked for a better set of role models as I was growing up.
And you shared that there's this kind of roll trippingly off your tongue as a lesson from your grandmother, which is you create the life you want. You control your destiny, and that was shaped very early in your life.
It was, and it was constantly echoed also by my mother. My mom used to say, "Hey, if you're not happy with something, go change it." And so she probably learned that from her own mother, but my mom would just say, "Hey, go change it. You want to create the life that you want. You have that ability." And so we also joke about it now. She was at my house, thankfully for 2 weeks. My husband had to be out of town in DC, and we get a laugh about it now. I said, "Hey, I used to say, hey, create this life or create this destiny. And, I took you up on it. And I wouldn't trade the life that my husband and I have created. A great partner. We have wonderful children. Well, when they behave, they're great. And when they don't behave, it's just chaotic. But I wouldn't trade what we've done together. And I thank my parents for pushing me. And I thank my grandparents for being a part of that journey. And not everyone is blessed by that support system. And maybe they have another support system, but I recognize that I was fortunate.
So you were very social, involved in, it was a small town. Sounds like you were just involved in whatever there was an opportunity to be involved in. Your hand was raised and you were a part of it. And so what is this trophy for? I'm looking at you holding a trophy here.
Oh, yeah. So I found the love of basketball in 4th grade. Didn't know I loved it. And so I got involved. And then besides regular, what I'd call, junior high school, I got involved in AAU travel, played all year round. And so we were fortunate to participate in a lot of tournaments in which we won quite a few. Quite a couple of those young ladies actually went on to play at Notre Dame that are pictured in that picture alongside me. But it was just a wonderful experience. Sports were a big part of it. Played high school golf, played basketball, and also we're in too many clubs to count, whether it be Future Business Leaders of America, Student Council, Students Against Drug Driving, French Club, you name it, I signed up for it. I just loved being part of the social piece of it. Also, I loved being inclusive and being part of any group that I could be part of that brought people together. And so I tried to be as active as possible. My mom was a big proponent of that, which is just be involved, be kind. There's no what she liked to call like a set friend group. She said, just be friends with everybody. Just works out better that way. And so I just took that advice, tried to get along with everybody, which was great.
That's actually really wise guidance from your mom. Very wise guidance.
Yes, it was a good move. I had a lot of friends in high school. I enjoyed that experience. Probably rolled into college. I probably worked a little too much in college and didn't have the typical experience, is what I would say. But still had a great group of friends. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think that friends help create an environment in which you can bounce ideas off of. They help you grow. I also recognize that friends can walk in and out of your life depending on the chapter you're in, but they're a key part of your growth and they're needed for your sanity, at least. So,
Kim, I'm just having this thought as you're describing your high school years and your sports involvement. And can I ask, I'm thinking about basketball. How tall are you?
I'm short.
I know.
I played point guard or shooting and then two. So I played a one or a two. I'm 5'5". Um, Best free throw percentage on the team. I love to shoot the three, but I was scrappy and I was fast. And that's what I had going for me. And that's what mattered. But yeah, I loved it. And it was
You're still scrappy and fast. Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting?
I'm still a little scrappy. I wish I was as fast as I was. I wish I would have kept up on running, but yeah, I loved playing basketball. It was a fun experience. You meet a lot of people, you travel a lot of places, but it just gave you a wonderful outlet. I think exercise is a key part of was a key part of my life and was in and out of my life through all of the past 9 years as I was having my family expanded. And I'd say in 2024 became a big part again of my life, which was engaging with my trainer 3 to 4 days a week and getting exercise as being part of a big part of my life. And so I missed it. I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started to engage with her again. As I 2024 and 2025 is kind of the investment in Kim again. And we can talk about that a little later. Like so.
So you went to Indiana University. You majored in
Business and
business.
psychology.
That's right. Okay. And you worked your tail off.
I did.
Yeah. How many jobs were you holding at one time while you were going to school?
So I worked at a bank, which was great. That's how I started to find out I loved the world of finance. But I worked at a bank and then I had a job at a clothing store on the weekend, usually like 1 day a week. And then I also waitressed on and off through those 4 years too, but always trying to save money for part of tuition or part of books, however it worked, just so that when I was out of school, didn't have that burden of the debt that comes along with being in school. So work was a big piece of the college years.
So outside of school, then when you graduated, kind of tell me a little bit about that journey that you had going from kind of being a student and a student worker into your professional world.
Well, luckily I had a natural progression, which was amazing. So the bank that I was at the time, I stayed with for a little bit. And then I started to look for more of what I would call not a typical internship because it was paid, but almost like a rotation. And I went to KeyBank, and that was in Northern Indiana. And I had the opportunity to work in what is like the retail banking and then their small business banking, corporate banking, their McDonald investment group. And so I got the opportunity to get a look at many different parts of the business, which ultimately landed me in business banking. And I had the opportunity to review business plans for small businesses around what at that time would be South Bend, Indiana. And so it's nice to go back there today and see what made it and what didn't make it. Even if as I've been gone since 2006 from that area. And it was a nice stepping stone to know that I love the relationship side of banking in itself. And then when I made the leap to Wells Fargo in 2007, when I made the move to Omaha, it was, hey, I'm going to be on the relationship management side. And I started at the private bank with Wells Fargo at ground level as a private banking associate, learning the banking side for what I would be those high net worth clients. And it was a great experience when I got the stepping stone to start with Wells Fargo in 2007.
Do you remember, your decision to be intentional about the kind of internship that you had? It's pretty interesting for a young person. Do you remember kind of what that process was for you to realize, I want something that's going to give me a broad exposure? Was it natural, just come from yourself, or was there some coaching you received from someone else?
I will tell you, Janine, part of it was I knew what I didn't want to do. So it was, I did not want to work in restaurants. Good for my mom. She did it for a long time. I did not love it. It was hard work. I knew I didn't want to work outside. I liked being inside. I liked when I was working at the bank through college. And then just even getting a little bit of exposure. One thing that the bank always did when I was working as a teller and even was a personal banker in college, they had people from other parts of the bank come in and talk to you about what they do at the bank. And I thought, oh, that's really neat, or oh, that sounds interesting. And so some of those speakers, they stuck in my mind so that when I started really actively looking, I had an idea like, that's what I want to look for. And not that I could be selective, but I knew I wasn't in a hurry just to take anything because I had a job. And so I wanted to at least make sure that I was going to be happy with the next move.
It's interesting. I love that approach and this idea that because sometimes when I'm working with folks, or gosh, think about when I'm working with folks, let's say I'm thinking about dating as well, because sometimes finding a company or finding a team member is not dissimilar to the dating process, if that makes sense. And I always say, don't fall in love on the first date, whether it's an interview or anything with someone. But that sometimes when folks have a difficult time clarifying what they really want, just identifying what your no's are, what I don't want, helps create what your yeses could be. And it's a wonderful sorting process. And so you figured that out when you were just a kid.
Yes. That was real simple. And again, that's just getting the experiences I had, which I'm grateful for, but it really highlighted what I didn't want to do.
There you go. So would you mind sharing what brought you to Omaha? Because that would probably be part of your story that is nuanced differently than much of your story. Can you share a little bit about what brought you to Omaha?
Yes. So I was in a relationship at that time. And so we had moved here in 2006. That relationship did not work out. And like all relationships, they run their course, which can happen. But one thing that was unique about that experience was my parents' reaction after that, which was they had said, "Hey, you've got a great career in Omaha. Don't make any, kind of crazy decisions at this point. Don't do anything that you might regret. Make an emotional decision. So take a year before you think about moving back or make any significant changes." And so I did. I stayed here and stayed committed to what I was doing here. And it has, what I would say, had a profound trajectory on my life. And so I would say it has led me down a journey that I never would have ever saw for my life. And I'm grateful that I was brought to Omaha because I would have never met my spouse. I probably wouldn't have the family that I have today, or even the firm that I have today. But yes, I followed a boy, is what I would say, and it didn't work out. So
thanks for sharing that. It's interesting. It is not uncommon when I talk with people when they have relationships or marriages that don't work, that they go in this place where they categorize them as something either I don't want to talk about or it's a major failure. And one of the beautiful things about your journey that's consistent throughout your life, frankly, is that hard stuff actually turned into golden stuff for you, that you continue to turn hard stuff into gems in your life, to mix a metaphor there, because I said gold before. But anyway, so thank you. Thanks for sharing that. When did you start your graduate studies at Creighton?
That's a great question.
Was it in the middle of all of that or after all of that?
I believe around 2009 is. So I was in that relationship, decided I wanted to go back to school because I wanted my career to grow. And I was young at Wells Fargo and in the private bank. And I knew that I wanted an advanced degree and I thought it would help. And so I went to Creighton to get my MBA and focus in quantitative analysis, I thought that would help on the investment side, especially in the business that I was working in. And so I did that in 2 years, just really hunkered down. Loved my experience at Creighton. Spent most of my time at the library every weekend, and then wrapped up that degree within two short years.
Wow. While working full time.
While working full time, yes.
And what were you doing? Kind of, why don't you tell us a little bit about that career trajectory that you had with Wells Fargo?
Yeah, so started there in 2007 as a private banking associate. While I was doing that is when I went back to school at Creighton. And after I finished up at Creighton, not long after that, um, one of the directors, Deanne Wanger, she was wonderful to partner alongside, said, "Hey, let's try you in a sales role." So she gave me my first break. And I would say she was a wonderful mentor for me. And so I started in a trust role. And my first year in sales was probably my best year in sales. But what I learned through that transition when I was in my late 20s in the private bank there at Wells Fargo was that I loved working with nonprofits, foundations, and endowments, and also individuals and families around their philanthropy. That was the thing that I loved most. And so as I was working with families and nonprofits, I had decided, and this is just my work journey, I'm then going to go back to school again and get a master's in nonprofit administration. So I get that, but then in parallel to that, Wells Fargo then moves me up to a leadership role. So I took over managing the trust group there at Wells Fargo, and then took over managing the trust and investment group at Wells Fargo for about 6 states. And that's when I about left to launch this firm. So that's when my tenure at Wells Fargo concluded after about 15 years, which would have been in 2021 is when I had left them.
About 4 years. So I have a picture up of
Yes,
a football field that you love.
I do.
And I love.
Over well, Janine, and the state of Nebraska. So, yes.
I was rooting for you guys in the championship this year. So I have fond memories. I'm a Chicago girl, and I actually have fond memories of Notre Dame going to pick my dad up on my way to my grandparents. We'd go through Chicago, and he was a recruiter for a Big 8 accounting firm or Big 6, whatever it was back then. And he loved Notre Dame, and we would see the Golden Dome as we were getting ready to pick dad up on our way down. So I have fond memories of that. And there you are. We are standing arm to arm, Notre Dame. But there's a lot of other things that happen between kind of graduating from Creighton and so fill us in, get us up to date on what was happening in your life in the midst of all of this.
Yeah. So I obviously one relationship had concluded. I was had met a dear friend of mine at Creighton when I did my MBA. His name's Bo Gebby. We stayed in touch. He was president of a nonprofit that he worked with youth leadership on. And he said, "Hey, why don't you volunteer for Hobie?" I said, "Yeah, it sounds like a great idea." I go out to volunteer at this seminar. And that is when I first had the opportunity to meet Vince, who was also volunteering. And he knew Bo from his fraternity days. And so we, briefly spoke. We come back to Omaha. Bo has a birthday party and says, "Hey, I think you two would have a lot in common. You guys should, chat." So Vince and I just kind of chatted a little bit, and then chatting led to many of us were participating in what we called like a breakfast club. So every week we'd choose a different breakfast place around Omaha, and we'd, get together. And eventually Vince was like, "Hey, we should probably go on a date." And so we went on a date in July. I think I'm going to get it wrong. I think the date was like around July 6th in 2013. And so we went on a date and we got married July 5th, 2014 in Jamaica, and never looked back. So yeah, we were married 364 days later. We had a wonderful time of traveling, got along well. we were aligned. I think having the right partner alongside you in your journey is also really important. Just because you need that support, right? Every relationship comes with challenges. We all know that, right? Nothing's perfect, but you also know that you don't get the growth from a relationship if you're not walking alongside the right person. And so he's the right person for me, and I would hope he'd still say I'm the right person for him. Um, and so yeah, we got married, and then we said we want to have a family. Let's do this. We're in our 30s. And I had just recently been accepted to Notre Dame, and we started we had already been informed that IVF was going to have to be the route for us. And so we knew that. And I had already completed 1 year at Notre Dame. And then by the time I went back to Notre Dame for the second summer, so Notre Dame's program is a majority of it is on campus. So the second year I went back on campus, I was pregnant with Stella. And by the third year I went back, I took a 6-month-old back with me, and she got to hang out with grandma and grandpa while I was in class. But you're in class, you're covering 2 classes in 2 weeks. So you're doing one class from 8 to noon, and the other class from 1 to 5, and you're going through 2 classes in 2 weeks. So she made that journey with me, and then of course when I went back the next summer, you got a 1.5-year-old with you. And Wells Fargo was supportive through that journey as I wanted to advance my knowledge in the nonprofit space. But yeah, I took my little newborn with me, and then my toddler with me, and Vince would come out and visit. But it was a great experience, and she got to be on campus like you're showing right now, which is wonderful. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. So your IVF journey continued, and this is a really core part of your journey. And so can you tell us a little bit about the journey that you had with your next pregnancy?
Yeah. So this is one that is always tough, as you got to hear it before. And it's a challenge for me to speak about, but it raises awareness for everybody, as you never know people have these stories until you talk about them yourself. But so yes, my husband and I went through IVF, and so we had Stella, and then tried multiple cycles. They failed after, I think we had 3 transfers after that didn't take. And then so we finally had a successful cycle that took with Emerson. Wonderful. We're excited. My husband's on the National Engineering Board at that time. I'm gearing up for my 20-week appointment, and he's heading out of town. He's like, "Hey, do you want me to, not go? I'll come to your appointment." I'm like, "No, everything's going well. You go. I know you love to nerd out and, take engineering exams. So you go do what you're passionate about. I'll pop in the doctor's office. Everything will be great." Well, it wasn't so great. And so went to the doctor's office, and I knew it wasn't great when the nurse just said, "Hey, doctor will be in just a minute." There's always just a feeling you get when you know there's some news coming. And so the doctor came in and just said, "Hey, just want to talk to you." And this is Dr. Robertson, who's now retired from the high risk doctors group there at Methodist. And he said, "Hey, I just want to share with you that, it looks like your water might break. Your sac is coming out. And so we're going to need to admit you into the hospital this weekend." And all I could think about is, all right, we've got Stella at home. My husband's out of town, the logistics of what needs to happen. I think the weight of what's happening to me and what's going on hasn't really sunk in, right? And so I call my husband, of course, and I knew at that time he's probably going to have a more dramatic reaction than I'm going to have at that time. And so it's probably better he was away so that he could process his own emotions and I could process mine. So he hops on a flight, comes home. Luckily, we have, friends and family in town that cover Stella. Had the opportunity that weekend to meet a doctor who we still keep in contact with today. And I have to thank him profusely, Dr. Todd Lovegren, wonderful physician. So he performs a surgery, says, all right, hopefully we can um, get you across the finish line. I go home on Sunday night after being checked in on Friday. My water breaks that Sunday night, 20 weeks. Go back into the hospital, see Todd's face there. He's like, all right, here's your options. How do you want to proceed? My husband and I say, hey, we're going to go home. We're going to give this a go. Knowing that the statistics are not in our favor, right? More than likely, you don't get across the finish line with a live birth. And so right then, you have to get in a mindset that just, one, embraces the situation you're in, and two, you need to be positive about where you're going and create this destination in your head. And so that's what I did. It was one day at a time. And I was going to be positive about it. I would get up every day, and that time we knew he was going to be Emerson. We knew he was a boy. And so it was like, hey, Emerson, one day, just give me another day. And that was the same speech every day, trying to keep my mind busy until we would check into the hospital around 25 weeks. I would see the doctor roughly every week, and he did a great job of just trying to answer my questions, keep me focused on the goal. And then the opportunity came where, we made it to 25 weeks. So, your chances are already improving, right? And I check in, that's the Tuesday. And I actually checked in on 2/10. And then on 2/11, I wrote that calendar out. And I tried to give myself the goals of working towards achieving, can we get to 26 weeks, 27 weeks, 28 weeks, and just counting down the time till we get to what I feel like is a great outcome for everybody. We were fortunate. We made it just past 31 weeks. And again, before I even go into Emerson's story, I can't thank Methodist Hospital enough. And that not even just Dr. Lovegren, but Dr. Allison Phillips, my OBGYN, she would come nearly every day around lunchtime and come and see me and just make sure I was doing okay, just from the mental health perspective of it. Karen, who would come and clean my room and give me extra towels and just check in on me, because it takes a team, right? Everything's about a team. And during that, as all of you know, it's 2020. And so you paint that picture of COVID, right? So not only am I trying to be positive about getting Emerson across the finish line to that 31 weeks, there comes a point where you can't have visitors anymore at that hospital. So you got to really get your mental health in check. So my parents had to go home. They couldn't come see me anymore. My husband now he's mainly taking care of Stella. He can't bring her to come visit anymore. And so you're isolated. You're on an island, right? And I remember thinking to myself, like, what is happening, right? You went from having this full support system around you, and the world around you and outside is completely changing, and you have no control. And I think that's through this whole situation, when you and I spoke about this story before, which was, it really puts in perspective what you can and can't control in your life. And that was the biggest part of this story, and what has stuck with me through all of it, and how I changed when you and I go into the leadership piece, or how I continue to change my own style, is I couldn't control these things, but what I could control was how I woke up every day, what my attitude could be. Like, yes, we're going to make it. We're going to do another day. You are going to come into this world. You are going to be a healthy baby. And so, he entered this world on a Sunday night, and he entered this world. And it's crazy. I took that's the only picture I had, which sounds crazy. It's like I knew he was going to be born that day. I took no photos. And that day I took a selfie, hadn't really eaten. And sometime about 6 hours later, they said, you're going to have a baby. I started to develop an infection. I got lucky because the hospital also was strict about which doctors could deliver, who was going to be there. And I think Dr. Lovegren had pretty much told his residents that if he didn't get the call to deliver the baby, like, was not going to be a good scene. So he rolled into that hospital that evening and was there to make sure that he was partnering alongside Dr. Phillips too. So it was great. Like I had my team there to welcome him into the world. My husband was there, and while my husband took Emerson, it was focused on that piece of our world because we knew that his lungs weren't going to be as strong. Dr. Lubgren, held my hand while my husband was dealing with a baby. So I wasn't alone, right? Because it's an odd feeling when you watch your baby, be taken away. You're completely exposed at this time and you just don't know what it's going to look like. And so the hospital, I'm forever grateful to, and that experience and how well they took care of me. Emerson, the NICU is a wonderful, the group of ladies, the nurses, the doctors, they obviously know what they're doing, right? So Emerson was in his little spaceship, as we like to call it, and he was safe. He was on oxygen. He was in the NICU for about 2 months, and then was eventually able to come home. Now he did have to come home on oxygen, so you can imagine that during COVID we were a little bit more sensitive to that, just because we didn't want him to pick up anything that had to do with his lungs. So we lived a pretty sheltered life. I think that photo that you're showing right now is the first time I was able to hold him. I was pretty excited about it, but also terrified at the same time, because he was tiny. He was, just over 3 pounds. And so the pictures never do it justice when you think about a baby that's just over 3 pounds. But he got to come home. He met his sister right there, which was exciting. She had been waiting patiently because she wasn't unable to meet him during those days. She couldn't wait to meet him. Now, I will say she was feisty. She realized after he came home, she probably didn't want a sibling as much as she thought she did. So we always had to make sure she left his oxygen in his nose because many a time she tried to take it out. So she's a Spitfire. But he was on oxygen for like the first 18 months of his life. And he had some hearing challenges, but by all accounts, he's a healthy, feisty, soon to be 5-year-old boy. And we're forever grateful for that journey. It was a tough one for our family. I will say for me is very tough, and that you'd never like to talk about yourself. But I think for women, it doesn't get talked about enough, which is that postpartum journey. And knowing that, talk to your partner, talk to your family, talk to your healthcare professionals, because they're there to help support you, because it is a tough journey. And so just know that everyone's there to help you along the way. And I think for women, sometimes it's hard to admit that they need that help, right? But those experiences are really challenging for women.
Kim, when you share that story, which is just so powerful, I can't help but go back to think about the year that my husband was fighting cancer, and it was 3 years ago now, and he was really sick, and I just remember leaning in as hard as I could to be there and to be grateful for. We counted hundreds of staff that helped us in the hospital, and to be grateful and to support him. And we kept getting feedback. Wow, it's inspiring. You're so grateful and positive and all of that. When we finally got through it all,
Yeah.
I was like, it's like, I need help because then after the fight, it was then becoming aware of what the fight had done to me, or pay attention to things that I hadn't had the bandwidth or would not have been wise to pay attention to during that journey, because we had crossed that finish line. And so then I went into counseling and did some things like that just to help me deal with my stuff. You took up cooking though, yes?
Yeah, you're right. Cause I think your body just lets go, right? You fight, right? You keep just going. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to do this, but your body finally just lets go. And it's a ball of emotions. But mine was, I can't even tell you how many cookbooks I bought during COVID. Not a healthy amount is what I'll tell you. I became obsessed, but it was the baking and the cooking. And I know my husband finally looked at me one day and was like, you got to stop. This has been very unhealthy for our waistline. Like, we've got to shift directions here. Like, can we find a different hobby that we can look into? And so, but it was my form of therapy, which was just, I had to keep busy. And so it was the cookbooks that did it for me. And I'm not much of a crier, but it was a lot of crying, which was not my typical way uh, of an outlet, but it was at that time. So a balance of cooking and some crying. And honestly, I think the work from home couldn't have come at a better time for our family. Um, and I know that it was a challenging time in the United States, but it really benefited what we had going on in our situation, just to be present for our child who had additional needs and who really didn't want out in the public and who needed to really have his lungs grow and be healthy. For us, it provided an opportunity for our family to hunker down and just really invest in caring for him and invest in our family.
So uh, you have a wonderful, just wonderful wisdom on what you learned from that experience and how it informed your leadership moving forward, and maybe even transformed your leadership moving forward. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I think it goes back to the controllables, not controllables, and also reactions, right? I started to reflect about, even I was younger when I took on a leadership role at Wells Fargo, and I recognized that I was probably a little fiery sometimes or thought something was a bigger deal than what it was. And then I started to recognize in the grand scheme of things, a lot of the things I would get fired up about wasn't really that big of a deal. And the ability to control your reaction is probably the biggest power you could have over something. And being able to control that is amazing. And so that's what I started to work on. And I know that I came back a different way because many people say, like, you've changed, you're different. And I started to be like, is that really a big deal? Like, when you think about it, you go home tonight, is that really worth that much anger or that much frustration over? Or is there a better way to handle it? And I wanted to lead by example on many of those things. Because, yeah, I probably was the first back in the day to fire off that email or pick up that phone call. And then I started to realize that's just not how I wanted to conduct it anymore. Now, behind the scenes, I still might get a little fiery, but it's not how I'm going to handle it. But it also how I engage with people. There's a story behind everyone, right? And for so long, I didn't even think about that. I don't know. I probably lived in my own world like so many people do. But it brought out that just, somebody had said something like, well, I didn't realize your son had hearing challenges and oh, he was wearing hearing aids. So that must be why she's a little focused somewhere else. Well, yeah, my family's a priority. That's actually the top priority for me right now. But also I realized, like, you've got coworkers that, yeah, are battling cancer, or they've got a parent that they're trying to help navigate maybe a disease or going to, an in-home care. Like, everyone has something that they're battling, and how can I help support them? Or how can, they talk to me about it so that I know that at work, if something's going on, I can better help support them, be there for them, or at least, see if we can delegate something out for them so they don't feel the pressure of what's going on. Better yet, if they give me the flexibility to let them just be out of the office to take care of what they need. But we have such a great group of people, even at Private Wealth, getting them to take time off seems like they don't want to do that. Some people just love to work, right? But I just want to have that empathy that people know that they're the first priority. I want them to be okay. Like, how are you doing? How can I support you? And so I think it's just changed my reaction. It's changed how I want to interact with people. And I hope that people feel that. Um,
You created some boundaries that help you kind of establish your priorities. And can you share what those boundaries are?
Yes. I think it's always tough, right? So when I created some of these boundaries, first of all, I always give the disclosure, they don't work for everybody. They work for our family. And I also recognize they work for this chapter of our life, right? Because I think every year or every quarter people evaluate or you have to adapt or adjust. So for me, I took over as CEO in 2024. One of my goals is that I'm not out of the house more than 2 nights in a row. And that's for two reasons. One, it's for my spouse, my partner, because it's a lot. We've got 4 kids. It's a big ask. And then secondly, also for my children, it impacts them when you're out of the house for a couple nights. It just um, Stella, I love her dearly, but usually she likes to act out a little bit more. And even at school, they notice it. Like, is something going on? Oh yeah, mom's traveling. So I think having that 2 night maximum, it works for us. And right now, another boundary I have is I want to be present for their events. And again, it works for us because I know it doesn't work for all professions, but I go to the soccer games, the basketball games. It's a priority for me to be there. Their school functions. Right now, we only have 2 kids participating in sports. When I have 4, I know that's not even doable. It's probably not, I don't even, logistically, it's not possible, Janine, to do that. But right now, I have that flexibility to do that. Another, I wouldn't call it a boundary, but something that my husband and I are very intentional about doing is just making sure we're either date night or date lunch, right? It just, this world will, tree up, spit you out kind of thing. And so making sure that your partner is aligned in the journey. Because while I might have a busy life, he also has a busy life. Besides our 4 kids, he's got his own business. He's working on his PhD. And so how do we make sure that we're connecting? Because we've got to make sure that we're aligned in our growth and in our journey. And so we try to make sure we're really intentional about that piece too. And then until 2024 was this way. And so I need to put it back in for 2025. So I'm saying it on this podcast to hold me accountable. I worked out 3 to 4 days a week. It was a non-negotiable, and it was good for just my mental health, good to step away from the business. 2025 started out just with a bang and kind of chaotic. And I have not held that kind of protected space of data investment in myself. And so by saying it today to you, that is how I'm going to hold myself accountable to it. So
I have a goal by the end of this month to be back in that rhythm myself. So maybe we could hold each other accountable. That's one. It's hard to get those rhythms going when there's a lot of change in your life. So we've spent so much time talking about just robust, powerful learning experiences throughout your life and predominantly from the personal side. And I would be remiss if we didn't take a couple of minutes just to share your journey, this successful business that you're leading, because it's important that people not only understand that you are a powerhouse CEO snow day mom, but you're also a powerhouse CEO of a very successful firm. And so I have a picture here of your team. Can you tell us a little bit just what is wonderful about your firm and how it's grown? Just tell us a little bit about your firm.
yeah, I'm excited. So this picture you're looking at right now is our Omaha team. So just take a step back to 2021 September, and we launched in Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, Iowa, and a smaller office in Omaha. So there was 2 people in Omaha, and we had said to ourselves, we wanted to create a space for our clients that we could make sure that we were truly acting as fiduciaries. So whatever their needs were, we were going to make sure that we met them, whether it was like a banking need, a lending need, investment need. Wells Fargo was changing their model. A lot of big banks were changing their model. And that's fine because it works for them, but it was starting to impact our clients. So how do we make sure that our clients are served the way that we feel that they deserve to be served? So 2021, we took the big leap. And so we went out on this journey. And then not even a month later, we opened up an office in San Antonio, Texas. And then in January of 2022, we opened up a Midland, Texas office and then an energy division. And then in 2023, we opened up a St. Louis office. And then in March of 2023, we expanded our Omaha office, which is what you're seeing here with the team itself. And it's been a wonderful journey. We were eligible just last year to be on the Forbes list, and we made it in the top 1% of the Forbes nomination. We are extremely excited to share that, which is pretty impressive on your first time out to be in the top 1% of RIAs in the country. But I think it's the fact that we not only just offer quality advice to our clients, we help them execute on what they're trying to achieve. What are their goals? What do they want their legacy to look like? And we walk alongside them. And this firm is not about one particular person. It's about a group of individuals who come together to serve their clients and their community. And I'm impressed every day. I'm just in awe of the people I get to work alongside. And that's really what it's about. Do you surround yourself with great people? And I do every day. And
so if I scoot forward here to this wonderful picture
yes.
of your family, and what would we do without our YouTube fireplaces burning, right? Oops, let me back it up again. And so your family, you now have twins. Am I?
Yes.
It's
a crazy journey I added. Yes. 1 year after the firm launched, my husband and I decided to use our last embryo, in which he jokes that couldn't the doctor have just said no, Kim? But nobody told me no. We used our last embryo and it split, gave us identical twins, and here we are. So the girls are wonderful. Right now they are into pretty much beating each other up. They're a delight, but they like to beat on each other. So, we call it twin wrestling right now.
I want to pop up a picture from your youth here that you shared. And this is you at Taco Bell.
Yep. Where it all began. Yes. My first real job. Yes.
And you kind of look like, you said you have an Irish background. You kind of look like Rory McIlroy. If I'm looking at this picture, I'm gonna have to get a picture of him next to you. But anyway, I digress. Tell me a little bit about, if you were to say, here are the most important lessons that I would say that I have learned, or this is what's most important given the journey that I've been on, kind of starting in that small town in Indiana with your amazing family and your work experience and this journey that you've had. If you were to say, gosh, these are 2 or 3 things that would be guidelines to live by, what would you say?
It's tough because I'll probably name more than.
That's okay. You got more, that's okay.
I'd say work hard. Be present. The right partner matters. And then invest in yourself. Those are probably my 4.
And I would say, and prioritize your family. That's something that's come out of.
Yes, my family.
Story.
It was actually one of the hardest things to do was to talk about it today, and we didn't get into it. And I guess it's just part of the boundary thing. My family is not actually in any form of social media or part of any conversations typically. I think one of the only photos that exists of my family is in the Methodist newsletter, Janine, when they shared the Emerson story. And I've always kept it that way because for me, my family is like this private, sacred part of my life that I get to come home to, no matter how chaotic it is. It was always one part of my life that was just mine. And so even today felt like, oh, like, this is vulnerable because not everyone gets a glimpse inside of my life. And so this was a unique experience for me because it's not talked about a lot. I don't share it very often. Pictures don't exist of them online. So when I think about a boundary I probably missed, one of them is that they don't exist on social media and they're not usually part of any stories I share. So this is an exception today. So
Thank you for that. Thank you for A, trusting me,
yeah.
and B, for your generosity to know that when we share our stories,
Yeah.
they help other people. They inform, they encourage, and they help other people. So, Kim, I'm just so thrilled that you are in my world. I'm delighted that you said yes to this interview today. And so thank you so much. I can't wait. You're so young. I can't wait to see what's ahead for you as a leader, but for that beautiful family of yours. I'm really excited to learn about your future as you grow.
Well, I appreciate it. This was a wonderful experience, Janine. Thank you so much.